And I see one of my patrons in the challenge list. So let's take the game by Paralyzed Squirrel. I hope you're there and let's have fun. Let's play. Very excited to play against Kevin here, who's been supporting me for a very long time already. And I really appreciate it. So Kevin, thank you a lot. All right, what do I want to do? Let's go bishop b5. Oh no, I know what he plays here. He always plays the Steinitz defense, and he's a really big expert on that. Ah, and he can hear my commentary. Well, you know, a lot of people would leave it on to kind of cheat, kind of. But he says I'll turn it off, so that's very noble. Thumbs up. And he says that I know his system, which is true. So he decided to play differently. And we have the Roy Lopez exchange variation, which is a passion of my youth, let's put it like that. I don't play it these days anymore. But back in the day, I had some success with it, and I like that it's kind of without much risk. You can just play it. You don't have to know that much, and you have the tiny structure advantage, and you try to build upon that. So I play bishop e3 first, then develop the knight to d2. So I'm not blocking my own bishop by going knight d2 first. And then there's this idea to go c4 and to threaten c5. Winning the bishop, obviously, so black needs to go c5 himself. Or go b6. But, I think I can still go c5 here and sacrifice a pawn and give black tripled c-pawns. I think c5 instead is more precise. Yes, black is exchanging the bad bishop, but now I can go g4 maybe, followed by knight takes e5. That looks pretty good actually. I win back the pawn, and it's a central pawn, which is important. And black is left with these 3 pawns on the c-file. Tripled c-pawns, which of course are all weak. They're isolated, they're not protecting each other. You always want to make sure your pawns are protecting each other. So you don't have to protect your pawns with your pieces. Your pieces are more important. They want to do active things. They don't want to protect those lousy pawns. Okay, you need them, but you know what I mean. So always try to keep your pawn structure intact. And you see with these 3 pawns, no pawn is protecting each other. They're all helpless, relying on the pieces' support. For me, I also have a weak pawn, the pawn on d3. It's not protected by a pawn, I have to protect with my pieces. So he plays queen d4, attacking my knight on e5, attacking a pawn on b2. And I have a choice here between knight f3 and knight c4. But since this pawn on b2 is hanging as well, I probably should play like that. And I'm guessing he wants to follow with rook a8 to put some more pressure on this weak pawn of mine on d3. And that makes a whole lot of sense. This queen is actually very well placed. He plays f6 directly. Now, I don't think I'm going to take on g6 because it improves the position of his bishop, so I'll go back to f3. And I thought rook a8 was more precise because then he would force me later to take on g6, since otherwise I'll lose the pawn on d3. Alright, so now black wants to go rook d8 next, so it would make sense to move my queen to e2 or c2. What makes more sense? Probably queen c2 to already have an eye on this pawn on c5. Now I'll play rook to d1. Just a little bit worried about black's potential counterplay with h5. Maybe I should have put my queen on e2 after all. h5 is really worrying me. Okay. Gotta play knight h2. Yeah, he plays h5. Maybe he didn't turn off the counter, or maybe he's just a good player. Probably the later. Okay. And now maybe I can go knight e3, knight f5. That looks actually pretty good. Now I threaten the pawn on c5, and why didn't I go knight e3 last move? That makes so much more sense. I'm also protecting pawn on g4. Yeah, just missed that. Knight h2, of course, now looks very stupid. It's obviously not a move I want to play. Knight e3 last move directly was much better. Okay. Okay, maybe my chance to redeem myself by playing knight f3 now. If he takes on b2, I take on c5, hitting both h5 and a knight on e7. He could play queen b4 then though. Maybe he should do that. But in the endgame, I still have the better pawn structure, so my feeling is I should have the better chances. But probably queen takes b2 is necessary, and now queen b4. King f7, but now I can take on h5 with tempo. And that looks quite tempting. He needs to go bishop h7. But what will I do next? That's the question. But okay, I'll take this one. It feels like this should be right. And I can also go... Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, this is hanging. Probably missed that the queen could go over to h5 here. And now I'm just up a piece, obviously. And people are saying that is a very strong squirrel. That is true. It's not really paralyzed. Okay, maybe queen h7 was a little bit... I should have thought about this more, since now my queen is kind of trapped. You know? Game's never over until it's over. Actually, I can bring my queen just back here. So, it's all good, still. Maybe queen h7 wasn't necessary. Okay. Knight g4 seems to make sense to put some pressure on the f6 pawn. Rook f8, and now I'll just play queen g3, go after the c7 pawn. King d7. I'll try to play d4, d5 to open up the position. So how can I get the king? Now I'm getting to the king. Queen d7 checkmate is the threat, and here we got it. So it was an interesting game. I think I got the advantage when here Kevin played b6. I think c5 is the way to go, then b6, b4, b6, and this is equal black can go knight c6, knight d4 next. And it should be okay. Oh no, actually, hold on. Here, take with the bishop, of course. Get rid of that bad bishop. And that also allows black to go queen d6 defending the pawn. And then here, I think I'm doing better. But I think here, instead of f6, rook a d8, to play f6 next move could have cost me more trouble, maybe. Maybe queen b3 could be a smart move to stop f6. Prophylactic thinking, another very good, very important technique. Think about what your opponent wants to go next, play next, and then stop it. So maybe rook f d8, so if queen b3, black could go rook b8. That looks pretty sensible. Okay, maybe something like this. f6, takes, rook d1. And I don't know. Still, to me it feels like white should be better. Maybe I'll take the other rook, but it's not that clear. And then in the game, knight h2 was a horrible move. I can go knight e3 directly, keeping my knight on the active square and threatening knight f5 too as an idea, possible idea. And in the game, now my opponent blundered the piece. If he goes bishop h7 though, I think I should be also doing pretty well. I'm a pawn up here and not sure what I'm going to do next, but feels as though I should be better. But this is a whole different game, obviously, than what happened. Because here, it's not that clear at all. Maybe I can do something like knight g4. I have the idea of h6, potentially. Queen c4 check is in the air. Still looks pretty good for me, but whole different ball game.